Gary, let's take a moment and say thank you to our sponsors at Fuji Sport.
Yeah, absolutely.
They've been working with us for a very long time, not only on this podcast, but also at the Academy. And I'm taking a peek at their website right now, and they have a brand new ultra light gi. Now, this is mind-blowing. I'm looking at my size. A2 is 2.75 pounds. I mean, that's under 3 pounds. That's mind-blowing.
I could even lift that. And go to their website, fujisports.com. Check it out. Anything you could need for your jiu-jitsu journey, you can find at fujisports.com.
Hey, it's been a while since we started RŌL TV project.
It's been a while since you started it. I did come in later, and I can't say enough about it, especially the new platform. It's really amazing, fully customizable, and you know a little bit more about the structure.
Well, so two things you need to know. One is the subscription service, which is $9 a month. You can get access to hundreds of videos, hundreds of drills, techniques, and so on in a very nice library categorized as you need them. But two, different lessons. You can actually purchase those individually and you own them. So the subscription is not tied to it at all. You can look at things like spider guard, half guard sweeps, half guard chokes, folding pass, and so on. There's so many of them out there. So take a look and see where you need help with the videos, right? 30%. If you type in RŌL Radio as a code.
Who doesn't like saving money? Go to rolacademy.tv. What's up, everyone, and welcome back. If you haven't already, please remember to hit the like, share, subscribe, download, listen, and whatever other button there is, and leave us a review wherever you do listen. That ensures that we can continue bringing you the great guests and amazing content that you have come to expect. On this episode, Dan Hart discusses jiu-jitsu post-pandemic, what is truly important when it comes to growing an academy, his reasons for loving the gi, and his criteria for jiu-jitsu ranks. Here is the RŌL Radio with restaurateur, owner, instructor at Alpha BJJ in Woodstock, Illinois, and Henry Akins black belt, Dan Hart.
Welcome to RŌL Radio.
And we are live. And once again, Gary had to take a day off, and he's not feeling. He came down with something, so I'm running solo today as I did a few weeks back. But we have phenomenal guest. Dan Hart is in the house. Dan, thanks for your time. Thanks for being here. Thanks for syncing up, and thanks for visiting us and having this chat with me.
Thanks for having me.
No, absolutely. And I think what's coincidental or interesting that you are actually nearby. You are not that far from where we are. We're a little bit south from you, isn't that?
Yeah, we're up in Woodstock, Illinois, northwest suburb.
Yeah. So you guys not that far, drivable distance. How is everything going for you? I mean, how is everything unfolding in the recent times as this craziness over the last few years is kind of settling down and getting past all of this?
You know, it's been pretty wild for us. I have a kind of unique perspective because my primary job is in the hospitality industry. I own restaurants. So we went through all the shutdowns, also obviously shut down the gym. We shut down, my partner and I at the gym, luckily both, have full-time jobs. So we made the decision during the start of COVID to cancel everyone's membership, not try to charge anybody or do anything through that. So our kids program was completely done for almost a year and a half before we restarted it. So we really took a lot of precaution there. And now that we've relaunched it, we've been able to really build it. We now have more students than we've ever had by probably a landslide. As we record this, I think as of today, we're right about 110 students, which we're not, a very big gym square footage wise. So that part's been really good. For my regular day job, we're experiencing some really weird stuff with food costs and things like that, and labor shortage like everybody else. But overall, stuff's pretty good.
Well, it's interesting you say this because you're not the first person who says that this negative pandemic thing, whether you believe it or not, doesn't matter what your views are, but it created a huge impact on us and often is being viewed as something that impacted us in a negative way. But you're not the first one who says, coming out of this, the interest in jiu-jitsu is actually quite larger than it was before. Yeah. And I'm experiencing the same thing at my academy. I mean, literally, the doors are just flooding with new interests, new people. What do you think is that the pivot point, I suppose, the reasoning why now there's more interest than ever?
I think it's a couple things. One, I think a lot of people gained weight over quarantine.
Yep.
And I think two, a lot of people were already probably not in very good shape. And I think they realized, hey, being in better shape, being a more fit person makes me at less risk to get sick, when they started really looking at numbers and different stuff. And, I try to stay out of the conspiracy conversations, but, being fat and out of shape makes you more likely to die of everything. And in the current world that we're living in and how violent things are, being able to defend yourself, being able to defend your family is a huge value. And if you can come to a jiu-jitsu academy and get in shape, meet people, have a social circle that's great, as well as, be able to learn to defend yourself, that's pretty awesome.
Yeah, and I think there's the second component of people being locked up or isolated in some capacity for extensive period of time. I don't care if you were, social during that time or not. There is a limitation point that was applied across, the world. And now there's this sense of freedom, I think. And it's like, I've never tried jiu-jitsu and I always wanted to. Well, like, this is the time to do it. Now is the time. So it's interesting how this negative situation that was completely out of control for all of us now is turning into something more positive, and jiu-jitsu is really benefiting more than ever.
Yeah, I think it's awesome. We've got, like you said, your academy too, we've got more white belts than we've ever had. I do think one of the things I think was interesting, I'd be interested in your experience. I saw from friends on Facebook, even some of my students, more upper belts, I think, quit during COVID and stopped training than I've ever seen before. I know some black belts that, basically don't train anymore.
Yeah. And I had similar conversations with somebody else about this. And, I think this could be leaping or connecting to this larger concept of returning after time off, especially for the higher belts. So what I mean by this, if jiu-jitsu is part of your life and you do it 2, 3, 4, 5 times a week, and then it pauses, and you replace that time with something else, whether it's pizza and beer or hanging out with something else or going playing checkers, that time's been replaced. Yeah. And returning to jiu-jitsu is extremely difficult. And I think that's very visible with injuries, but I think more so after the pandemic. And unfortunately, I do agree. There is a large amount of guys who have a lot of passion for this, and I think they still do. It's just returning is hard.
Well, I think, most of the people that I know, at least, that are black belts are guys that started, maybe in their 20s, maybe in their 30s. So, they have families now if they're black belts. So if they took out that time, like you said, and they're spending it with their kids or their wife or whatever else, and now you're trying to come back 5-10 hours a week, that's tough to get that time back.
But let me ask you this. I'm curious your view on this. You love this thing. You love jiu-jitsu. I mean, you watch it online, you watch the fights, there was a passion, you follow it, whatever, you buy instructionals, all that stuff. And then the conversation unfolds. Well, come on, return, come back. Why are you not back on the mat? Oh, I'll be back. I'll be back. I'll be back next week. But you never see them. Why do you think it's so hard? Like, we want to. It's clearly that they want to, but what the hell is stopping them?
I think it's a combination and I think it differs from person to person. Some people are probably afraid that people that they were close with surpassed them, maybe in some of the lower belts, blue and purples. And, some of the guys with, families or work or whatever, I think it's, tough for them. We have some guys where I'll see them maybe once a month, and they used to be guys that were in, 3-4 times a week, and they just changed priorities in their life, and maybe they'll come back around, or maybe it's just, not something that's going to be a part of their life anymore.
How do you view this as an instructor? Is it difficult for you to see somebody who has devoted 5, 6, 8, 10, 15 years of their life, and now they hang that belt, and even there's the desire, but you're like, it's just not happening.
You can never want something for somebody else. And if they're doing, if they're fulfilled in life, especially someone who's an upper belt, I always say that, if you have a blue belt, a legitimate blue belt, you can defend yourself in 99.9% of situations. Yeah. So after you get the blue belt, you just love jiu-jitsu. You're getting better, of course, but I don't think we're necessarily training to, fight other black belts in the street. We're, fighting the general public. So if it's not something that, they love anymore, I don't want to force somebody to do it. And you don't want somebody to train, it's just like if you have a kid or a teen whose parents are making them train, they're not going to train hard. So, if somebody's training, if they've come back and they're in 1 or 2 days a week or, here or there and they're missing, I'll try to encourage them and, send text messages offline and, hey, see you tonight and hope you can make it and stuff like that.
Yeah, but at the same time, it's hard. Actually, matter of fact, I recently had one of my students, and he's older guy. He has career and priorities took different direction. But recently he returned, and the moment I saw him walking in, it was like big smile on my face. I was like, man, out of all people, I did not think I would witness this one. What's up? And what a phenomenal feeling to see somebody overcoming those obstacles and then returning on the mat, and then you see the big smile on their face.
We had the opposite too. I mean, we had students that didn't train at all during shutdowns that were very worried about their health, and I thought they were done, and then they came back and they're back to training, 4 or 5 days a week. So we saw that too.
Yeah, I have a handful of those students too. It was like MIA for a year and a half. I didn't even hear back from them, and then they show up one day and they are ready to go. Like nothing ever happened, just kind of continuing on right from that spot when they left off. So that's again, this situation, this circumstance out of our control now turns into a lot of positive. Do you think that, speaking of quitting and pausing, do you think that blue belt buzz or blue belt blues, whatever they call it, is that real? People,
I don't see it. I don't see it in my academy, honestly. We have lots of people that quit before blue belt, but I don't feel like we have very, very few people that stop training at blue belt. We have people that have been at blue belts a long time because maybe, I have some guys that got married, had kids, so they're sporadic or they took 6 months or a year off. But I don't really seem to think that we see that much. But we're a small gym, too, like I said. So maybe being a tighter knit group, and that's one of my worries with growing, into a bigger academy is, you lose that personal connection with some people. So I'm definitely cognizant of that.
Why do you think that happens when academies grow and that dynamic changes? And I think it's hard to tell whether it's good or bad. But it does change.
I don't think it's good or bad. It just is. But, if you got 15 adult students that are super dedicated and you're training them every day, 4 or 5 times a week, and then you jump up to 100 students and you've got, we've expanded classes. So we have morning classes and night classes. We're about to start 6 a.m. classes. I don't get up at 6 a.m. So, I'm not going to be there. So if I have people that are only training in that class, we could have students that I've never even met, if they're not coming to any of the night classes or the regular, morning ones. So I think, the key for me, or what we're trying to do is, for instance, the guy that's going to teach our 6 a.m. classes, one of my purple belts, Derek. So, the goal is for him to have that personal relationship, and have his own students. He's close to getting his brown belt. He's won Masters Worlds, at purple belt. So, he knows what he's doing. He's a great instructor.
But how do you keep this cohesiveness between all of the instructors, all of the classes? And you mentioned something important that I think is visible across all academies, that you have individuals coming to specific class, mostly because of their schedule and their life habits, right? But it is what it is. And even happens in my academy. It's like, oh, I don't even know who these guys are. I just stopped in because I had a day off and I don't even know these people. How do you keep this cohesive environment, this community, quote unquote, where everybody knows everybody?
I mean, I think it's key to have some social events. We do a Christmas party, we do a barbecue, some stuff like that. I think that's important. I also think, I don't allow the instructors to just teach whatever they want. We have a set curriculum that I set. So, if you come to classes in the first half of the week, whoever is teaching them, you're going to learn the same technique that's going to be on there. Our goal starting next year is we're going to start building out a video library also, so people miss classes or miss techniques, as long as they're a member, they can log in and watch those. But we also have a set group of rules for instructors, what's allowed, what's not. what we're looking for, promotions, stripes for white belts, things like that. And I think, you try to affect the instructors as a smaller group and then let them, go out and affect other people. Right now, only having 110 students. When I'm in town, I teach all of our adult classes currently. Mark, who's our gym manager, who's also a black belt, if I'm not there, he teaches and he covers all of our kids' classes as well. And he handles all the signups. That's really been the big jump for us is he, a little over a year ago, he quit his full-time job and came to work at the gym full-time. And that's when we really kind of just exploded in membership. I mean, I have to be honest, when I was running it, it was probably hard to sign up. I mean, I barely call people back. And then, if a student comes in for a trial class, I'm not going to miss rolling. So, hey, call me if you want to sign up and I'm going to jump on the mat right away. So having somebody that's really dedicated to that has been the huge difference for us.
And you mentioning is something really important. Again, it often that's underestimated part of running a jiu-jitsu academy. And I don't remember who on the show said this, but one of our guests said, it's very easy to open a jiu-jitsu place. It's extremely easy. The upfront cost, the capital investment is not that big. You just need some mats and it's easy to get it off the ground. But making a living on it, making it a business where it's really profitable and it's an environment where it continues growing over longer period of time, that is challenging. And I think that's a big component of it, having somebody to manage the facility, somebody who returns phone calls, somebody who takes care of these people, right? Do you see a lot of similarities between Jiu Jitsu Academy and the hospitality business that you're in, as far as taking care of this customer service?
Yeah, I mean, all businesses all have some things that relate to them, right? Social media content's really important for us. Mark does a weekly recap on a reel. We put all kinds of stuff out. And then, launching new things. Obviously, you don't have specials in jiu-jitsu, but, doing things like a women's camp, a kids camp, a bully-proof camp, doing shorter stuff to try to sign people up. Customer service is key. We try to, you fill out a form on our website for a free trial class. Mark is texting or calling those people within an hour. So he's right on top of them. And then if they come in, if they end up not signing up, he's following up with them. We signed up a guy recently. I was talking to him in the sauna and asking him how he found us, what the deal was. And he said, I signed up for a free class, but I didn't have the time to do it. And I was switching jobs. And he said, for 3 or 4 months, Mark was texting me every week or two, asking how I was doing, if I still wanted to do a free class. And basically, I just thought, man, this guy's really committed to getting me in there. So I came by and tried it. And, I started my new job and I love it. And so I signed up and, signed a 2-year contract and I'm all in. So, I think that customer service aspect really makes a difference, whether it's a plumbing business, a hospitality business, or a gym.
So why do you think in jiu-jitsu particularly that is not so visible? There are so many academies out there who, I don't want to say they run a bad job, but definitely the customer service, that managing and running the business is not so visible.
Well, I think the problem is that jiu-jitsu guys, this is probably going to be an unpopular opinion, jiu-jitsu guys and instructors think that how good they are makes a difference in how they run an academy. And I think it makes no difference. If how good they were or how deadly they were mattered, if that's what people really 100% were looking for, nobody would train taekwondo or karate or any of this stuff. Mm-hmm. When you drive by a taekwondo school, adult or kids, there's people that have thousands of members, even though we all know that none of this stuff works in a real altercation. So I think a lot of the guys I've talked to have said well, I've won world championships, or I've done this, or I'm teaching this amazing jiu-jitsu, so people will find me. And that's not the case. You have to have marketing. You have to have customer service if you want people to sign up. And also, people who've never trained before don't know what ADCC is.
Yeah.
They don't know what the IBJJF is. They don't care.
It is, you nailed this, because it is, I think, such a huge disconnect between running the business and being a competitor in jiu-jitsu, or even being an instructor. I feel like there are so many good guys, really talented practitioners, but yet their ability to teach and relay that information to somebody else, for whatever reason it is, it's not there.
Not everybody's an instructor, right? I mean, I've taken seminars from guys that don't have good competition records and have taught me techniques that are amazing that I use. And I've taken seminars with some of the top guys, and the information was not conveyed well. And it was stuff that they could do based on their body type that I couldn't even do. So, I don't think that matters at all. And it's unique in this sport in some ways. If you look at, basketball, football, other stuff, so some of the coaches have played, but some of them never have even played the game at a high level, maybe college. And for some reason, as instructors, you talk about what's that guy won or what's that guy done. None of that matters. If somebody can effectively communicate information and teach things, and they're a likable person, charismatic, and they have marketing and customer service, you're going to see their gym go through the roof. Whereas somebody else down the road could be a 5-time IBJJF world champion and placed at ADCC and whatever, but that doesn't matter to people that have never trained before. And we're not recruiting blue, purple, brown belts. We're looking for brand new people who've never trained before.
Yeah, and one of the part of the message that I always relate to my instructor is NBC. Nobody cares how many gold medals you have or how many trophies you have. I mean, that's a huge personal accomplishment. That's something that you should be proud of. But the person who comes in through the door, 90% of them, they don't even know what jiu-jitsu is, let alone knowing what the gold medal is for. So, and nobody cares. Nobody cares. And coincidentally, on that topic, I actually recently read an interview with Michael Jordan, and they asked him, how come you are not coaching? And he said it flat out. I would be the worst coach ever. My expectations would be so high, nobody would ever meet them, and I would fire everybody. He's like, I don't want to be the coach. I want to be the guy who plays the game, and I want to be the guy who embraces the game, but I cannot coach. I mean, that's a big statement coming from arguably the best of the best, isn't it?
Yeah, but I think it's very true. I mean, some people, and there's people that like to teach and people that don't. I mean, we have guys that have done very well in competition and they have no desire to teach. And I have other people that, are like, hey, my whole goal in doing this is I want to give back now that I'm a purple or brown belt. What do I have to do to get a class? What should I be working on? Things like that. Some people just don't want to. And that's also something that shifted. I think when I started jiu-jitsu, however long ago, 12 years ago, 13 years ago, I don't ever remember seeing a black belt that didn't teach, that wasn't an instructor. And now I think that's very common. I think it was an expectation previously that if you're a black belt, you teach classes, but not everybody wants to do that. And that's fine.
Yeah. And, kind of going back to when I was even starting, I remember clearly being told, like, you're never going to be a black belt. You're never going to reach that point. Like, it's just not going to happen. If you're here for the black belt, just give up right now, go home, Like, I flat out, every single week I was told that, So the expectation, I think, was different versus today. I think there is this desire for a lot of students to achieve that black belt level. But as a result of that, the expectation of them teaching, is just not there. Because, one, at least in my personal opinion, not everybody's going to be a world champion. Two, not everybody's going to make it to a black belt. And three, it's just not everybody's going to be a good instructor. But if you so desire to be one, well, we can teach you, we can prepare you, we can show you the ropes. And as long as you love it and you're compassionate and love, there's passion behind this, passion to talk to people, man, it's very rewarding profession, at least in my mind. Well, I suppose it should be, since I do it for a living.
Yeah, I mean, I love to teach, but we all have those days, right, where you don't want to be on the mat, you don't want to teach. It's not all every day is just fantastic. And, as instructors, we're teaching injured all the time, teaching, when stuff's hurting, we're tired, stuff's going on at home, whatever. So like any job, not every day, is fantastic. But at the end of the day, being able to help people and see people progress. And, that's everybody from, it's great to send somebody to a big tournament and they win, but it's also pretty great to see somebody that, socially was having problems and had no confidence, to watch them really, bloom into a better man or better woman and really be confident in how they carry themselves. That's equally as rewarding, if not more.
I was laughing because one of my students recently, a white belt, recently started in the last 6 months or so, came up to me and was like, "You have a dream job." And I just looked at him, I was like, "Buddy, it's still a job. Like, I love what I do, but there are days where I was just like, oh, I so don't want to be here." And, it is what it is, right? It's benefits, I suppose, and downfalls of every job.
There's no perfect job, right?
No, and I think I think what's important is that if we have that passion, we can bypass some of those bad days. We can get through it much easier because we just love what we do.
If there's no bad days and everything's just great all the time, then you don't even know the difference. You got to have the good with the bad there. And, there's some heartbreak. We're, upset when we lose students or they, quit training like we talked about earlier, or we haven't had much of it, but, sometimes we've had students before that say, hey, I'm going to go train over at this area over here. They're doing more of the stuff I'm into, and that's okay too.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, again, support, good service, embracing and showing the passion is really what matters. And I think that's what people do appreciate. And going back to the good days and bad days, I always think about it. How would we appreciate the good days if we didn't have the bad days? I think the bad days is really what's drive us to have the good days. It's just like a success and failure. How would we know that we're succeeding if we never failed? Everything would be a plateau. It's
like a jiu-jitsu analogy, right? I mean, if you're never getting submitted or putting yourself in bad spots, then you're never going to find out how to get out of those spots or get out of those submissions. And then if you actually have to use it and you find somebody with some knowledge, you're going to be in some trouble.
Yeah, no, absolutely. You have to test it out. You have to know, right? I mean, how would you know somebody's choking you if you've never been there, right? So listen, that your journey of yours started, about 12, 13 years ago? Is that what it is?
Yeah, something like that. I started out training under Mike Budnick, who's a Renato Tavares black belt. Mm-hmm. Mike was a former WEC fighter. He was on the Ultimate Fighter TV show. He was still, at the time, actively fighting, and that's what I signed. I didn't sign up for jiu-jitsu. I wanted to fight MMA. I also was at a point in my life where my life in itself, business-wise, was probably going pretty well, but I was over probably 240 some pounds. Mm-hmm. Wasn't working out at all. Was still in the hospitality industry, so I was living that hospitality lifestyle, bar lifestyle, out 7 days a week, drinking up to no good. And I'd always been interested in MMA, fascinated by it, wanted to do it. And, when I was younger, I was working so much, I never made time for it. And then I found out this gym had opened in Woodstock where I live. So I kind of just walked in and was like, hey, I want to fight. And, they didn't laugh at me, but they were pretty close. So Mike just basically kind of said, why don't you try a free week and see how that goes? So we did that. And I remember
hoping that you would quit probably.
Yeah. And then and he still tells the story that, I think we did cardio kickboxing because that was like a class that fighters would do, and then jiu-jitsu. And I was going so hard and was in such horrible shape that I was like dying. And then I remember there's a young man, I was going to say kid. Now he's definitely not a kid now, but Daniel Flora, who was living with Mike at the time in training and was an MMA fighter. And, classic story everybody has. He's like a 145-pound kid, and we're going to do jiu-jitsu. And they let me roll my first day. Things were different back then. And, this guy just beats the crap out of me. And I'm 240 pounds. Like, I'm pretty strong. And so that I was just hooked after that. I mean, I started at that time, Mike was offering 3 classes a day, Monday, Wednesday, Friday. And then I think 2 classes, Tuesday, Thursday. I started going to every single class every day, training as much as I could. And, I ended up having 3 MMA fights as an amateur. I was 3-0, but, MMA was different back then. I don't know that we were fighting the best guys. But, from a weight loss perspective, I mean, I fought at 170. So pretty big swing there.
Yeah, I mean, I'm laughing because my story is literally the same or very similar to it. On my first day, I ran into Miguel Torres. And he beat the crap out of me, and then I'm scratching my head, how come this guy is literally like 100 pounds lighter than me, and what the hell just happened here? But I just forgot what I wanted to ask you. Oh, damn it. But, I know. What do you think is so appealing behind this raw fighting dynamic? Because I think similar stories like ours, I hear at least on this show and many others talking to people all around everywhere, it's like even to this day coming in And people might be coming into jiu-jitsu for, social components or getting the weight loss. But the moment that physical engagement takes place, especially for guys, it is so appealing, so addictive almost to the point. Like, we love that bond, that physical engagement.
I mean, I think if you take out actually MMA and even competitive jiu-jitsu and talk about just rolling and just being on the mat, there's rules, of course, and things we can and can't do, but I think it's the purest form of expression where it doesn't matter how much money somebody has, it doesn't matter where they came from, none of it matters, just you and them on the mat, and you're going against each other and you're going to collide. And then I just think it's the most primal, pure thing that you can be a part of. And people, in my experience, either really are drawn to that, like me or you, or some people shy away from it, but they know it's something they need or something they want in their life that, because it bothers them. For me, I was so drawn to it, so interested in it, fascinated by it. And then the idea that, like any naive person, I believe because I was 240 pounds and a big guy that, I could hold my own. And then I'm getting beat up by a child.
How old was he?
Like 17, 18, something like that. But, I remember hearing a story that Pedro Sauer talked about his first jiu-jitsu lesson and riding home on the bus and being like, I don't know who knows this stuff. I got to be careful. I'm scared of everybody. I mean, then you start to really realize, you've heard it before, you've seen UFC 1 and some of this stuff, but to really be confronted with your own vulnerability is powerful. And then you have a choice if you want to do something about it or not. And, to me, I knew the first day I trained, I was going to get a black belt. To me, I'm hooked. This is it. I'm getting a black belt.
Not blue, not purple. You're skipping those. You're going for black directly.
Yeah. I'm going for black.
Did you have a plan, like as far as time, how long it will take you to do that?
Well, so it is funny. I do remember thinking, Mike and I traveled with Mike some, and we went to visit some school somewhere. I don't remember where it was, but this particular school had switched to a system of where, they were promoting by classes, how many you'd done, which, I don't agree with, and that's a separate topic. But I remember looking at it and I was going through doing the math of like how often I could train. What would be like the fastest time you could possibly get a black belt at this academy.
Like BJ Penn just in a couple of years.
Yeah. Well, I'm the opposite of BJ Penn. I'm extremely untalented and, I train more than most people I know, but that's because I have to learn anything. It takes me forever to, ingrain. I mean, I've trained with some guys or trained some guys where I can show them something and they can put it in their game and instantly start using it and hitting it. For me, it takes a long time. The body mechanics were never natural to me. I wasn't a wrestler. I was a distance runner in high school and college. I used to run 100 miles a week. I have extremely tight hips, so there's some movements I've really got to work on. And so, I know I've got to train harder.
How are your knees? Because I'm coming from a running background too, and so I know the pain, but I'm curious, how are your knees holding up?
Generally speaking, they're okay. I had a meniscus surgery on my left leg last November, but I think that was all from jiu-jitsu. And then, I went down to CPI, Cellular Performance Institute down in Tijuana right after my surgery a week later, and got stem cells injected into it. And, I had an aggressive physical therapy program and everything, but I was back on the mat in no time.
Good for you. Good for you. I wish I could say the same thing. I'm falling apart. My knees are, at least, but it is what it is. Listen, you talk about vulnerability and the mat being the equalizer for between professions and shapes and sizes and age and all that. Such an interesting topic when it comes to jiu-jitsu. I don't think there's many other activities or sports. And correct me if what you think. I'm curious what you think about this. But not only this, we come to the mat and we can be training with a lawyer or a doctor or a mechanic, a plumber, regardless of their sizes and shapes and all and skill set levels. But also, I think what's interesting is that we run into the guys who the odds are not on their side because of the physical attributes they have. And yet, we are the vulnerable ones. They could destroy us. They could, put us in these compromised positions. They could submit us and so on. So it's not so equal. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I agree 100%. I mean, you have to have trust in your training partners, when you're there, and, you're literally putting your life in someone's hands, right? I mean, if some guy locks something up and doesn't let go or doesn't, respect the fact that you're tapping or, whatever else. And, we deal with people that are extremely physically gifted, like we talked about. And then we deal with people, that maybe have never really worked out or haven't worked out in years and heard jujitsu is a good workout, or, listen to the Joe Rogan podcast, or, I was on the Cleared Hot podcast with my coach, Henry Akins, and we had 2 or 3 students that signed up and said, "Hey, I heard you on this podcast and I heard you say you were from Woodstock." And so I looked it up. It wasn't that far of a drive, and I've never trained before, but I'm, 40 years old, and, this sounds awesome. I want to try it.
Do you think the age matters?
In what? Performance?
Yeah, overall in jiu-jitsu. Does it matter that you're starting at 20, or does it matter that you're starting at 50?
Yeah, I mean, I think it matters in how fast you're going to learn. It matters in what your performance is going to be, but it shouldn't be a deterrent for people. I mean, you can't go back in time. If I could go back in time, I'd start at 3 years old. But, I started in my early 30s, right around 30. So, I wish I'd started earlier. I tell the young guys when they sign up and start that, they've got a huge advantage on stuff, but there's a disadvantage to starting young too. I mean, some of the young guys, some of the injuries that they get because they're trying to use that, physicality and strength and explode out of things, you see that a lot less with older guys. So if they come up training that way and being responsible to their bodies, sometimes, they end up in a better place.
Is there an ideal age in your opinion? Like if you had to pinpoint a block of time in ones that to bring him the most success, the safest way, like optimal time to start jiu-jitsu, is there such thing?
I don't know if there's such a thing, but I would think sometime in high school would be the optimal time. I think I know very few people that are still on the mat that started training as kids. And I know a lot of instructors like us that have kids that they tried to get to train at a very young age that did. And then when they were old enough to make the decision to train themselves, they chose not to because they were so burnt out on it. I mean, of course, you have exceptions like, say, the Rotullo brothers. But, that's a whole nother level of you're dropping out of school to train and do all these things. I mean, we all know, the most recent ADCC, I'm sure you watch too. I mean, wrestling is so important in competition, if that's what's important to you, that I think doing, wrestling in high school and training jujitsu and, doing all those things. But then you see, there's a big push for people wanting to be in MMA because it's glamorous. But, I try to advise anybody I can out of going into MMA. I mean, there's not much money in it. It's horrible for your body. Getting punched in the head is never a good idea.
Yet so many want to do it.
Yeah.
Going back to the kids, why do you think so many kids going through this rebellious, and not of rebellious is the term here, but I know what you mean by kids train early on, when they are younger, and then once they are able to make the decision in their teens, they don't want to train anymore. What does that burnout come from? Is it from the fact that they are forced to do it, or is it the fact that they train so much and they just don't want to do it anymore?
I think it depends on the kid. I mean, I think, some people, kids, whatever, probably have their parents forcing them to do it. So they get, sick and tired of doing it and they don't want to do it. And, people's interests change. I mean, there's a lot of kids that are into XYZ sport, baseball, football, basketball. And then, if they don't stay, I think a lot of it is probably social. People want to do what their friends are doing. If you don't have a core friend group that's doing that thing, you may not want to. And it's going to depend on I think a kid is more likely to stay with it if their goal is to be a competitor. I went to college based on, my distance running. I ran cross country and track like we talked about, but I picked my school and everything I did based on that because that's what was important to me. When I was younger, I played basketball. I wasn't that good at it, and it didn't have a lot of interest to me, probably as a result of not being that good. So, in high school, I stopped doing it.
So how is one supposed to get good? I'm talking about the kids. If They go through these rotations of different sports and so on. I think what's unique about jiu-jitsu is that fact that it is ongoing and almost never ending. And that does not exist in many other sports. Matter of fact, I'm trying to think which other sport would have that, because they all have seasons. You look at basketball, football, even swimming has seasons. It ends. There is a time to kind of sit back, do something else, and you come back next season. In jiu-jitsu, that really doesn't exist, does it?
No, I don't think there's a jiu-jitsu season, but I think that's what's great about it too, is that, we have kids that do wrestling, high school age and younger. And so they're kind of less active in jiu-jitsu during wrestling season, or maybe they only make an open mat here and there, but, they stay involved, the ones that are successful, and, they come back. And then, in the summertime, there's usually not organized sports unless it's club stuff going on. So I think most jiu-jitsu gyms see an uptick of, signups or people coming back during, the summer months.
Do you think that's a good thing, or that sets them back as far as their progression of jiu-jitsu?
I don't think it's a bad thing. I mean, I don't think that just because we want to train 6 or 7 days a week that every kid is, going to want to. And it depends on what their goal is. I mean, if their goal is to have jiu-jitsu be a part of their life, then just train when you can. If their goal is to be an active competitor, that's a different story. If you have somebody that wants to travel around to tournaments and different stuff, and then I suppose further on what that goal is. I mean, are you trying to go to ADCC? Are you trying to be an IBJJF world champion? Or, is your ultimate goal to develop into an MMA fighter? I don't know. I don't know that at that age, those things are on their mind. I mean, I know, thinking back to when I was a kid and I was a runner, I was never good enough to go to the Olympics, of course, but that's what was in my head, is I'm training to, go to the Olympics.
Yeah, and I'm thinking, I mean, perhaps when you're a teenager, you might have some of those goals because you're aware of those events. But anything younger, I mean, they probably don't even know that these events exist, right? It's more of a training for social purposes, and perhaps just loving jiu-jitsu because they love grappling.
I mean, it's interesting though. I've been to the last 2 ADCCs, and the difference in the attendance is just insane. I mean, this last ADCC. I mean, it was like you were in a football game.
It was ridiculous.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was crazy. So with that being said, do you think that will continue happening? Do you think that the sport will continue growing to the point where it becomes mainstream? I guess the first question is jiu-jitsu mainstream at this point?
I wouldn't say it is, but I think it's getting closer. Things like, fight to win. And, I used to do a thing called Wanderlust grappling, where, we still have a stage and stuff. My partner Grayson and I would put on super fights and stuff. And, when you start getting people that are coming that are not practitioners, and I think that starts with events like that. Okay, my mom, brother, sister, girlfriend, friends are going to come watch me do a super fight. Then people start to understand the sport and what's going on. I mean, when I was at ADCC, you could hear a lot of people around us talking. There was a lot of people there that didn't know a lot about grappling, that seemed to not be grapplers. So when you start drawing people in that are not, participating currently in the sport, one, it grows the sport, because maybe they convert themselves and decide, hey, I want to try this. And maybe they don't, and that's fine too, but they start to understand it better. And, there is a faction of people that don't really enjoy seeing people get punched and kicked in the head, that do enjoy, watching grappling. I think that's why we're seeing such a rise in NOGI competitions, because NOGI's a lot more exciting to watch. Gi competitions are pretty boring.
Yeah, and that was my next question, is do you see that evolution of grappling or no-gi continuing while the disappearance of gi kind of is getting magnified?
I mean, if you look at Nicholas Marigali, I mean, he's exclusively competing in no-gi now and making all kinds of money. I mean, my guess is, I don't know him, but my guess is he's doing that because it's mainstream, or more mainstream, because he's making all kinds of money, even though, I mean, I think he won absolutes this year at Worlds. I think it's his second time, but his focus is on the no-gi game, because that we almost currently Ryan. I don't think that's really debatable anymore. He's exclusively doing no-gi and, making a lot of money and a lot of noise.
Yeah, and definitely it is more entertaining. Gi is by far more technical. Well, I shouldn't say this because pissing a lot of people off, but it is. Are you still with me?
Yeah, I got you.
Okay. Gi is more, Well, there's more friction, obviously, but I do think there is more room for technicality versus no-gi is a little bit more slippery, and that's part of the game. That's part of the rules of engagement, and I get that, but that's what makes it more entertaining, right? The scrambling and just being slippery and using those points of control when in very uncontrolled situation, if you will. You know what I mean, right?
Yeah, I mean, for me, I like training gi better. I train both a lot, but I prefer the gi because I have an advantage on technique over people that have a physicality advantage on me. If someone's faster than me, I can slow them down, in a gi if they're stronger, all those things. But I love training no-gi too. It's a blast. Why we do both, and they're both reasonable to train. I don't think the gi is ever going away. I think it's a great tool, and I think, even MMA fighters should train in the gi, but as far as marketability to the general public, I think that's all coming from no-gi.
Do you foresee gi disappearing or becoming what Taekwondo or karate is today?
Well, I mean, that's a two-part question, I think. I think we're seeing jiu-jitsu in general become, in some ways, watered down in what Taekwondo and karate were. I mean, people are getting black belts faster and faster. People are promoting people based on coming to classes and not based on, learning techniques. I think we're seeing the techniques in general get watered down and gone through. So, I mean, I think that's a major epidemic in jiu-jitsu right now, and something that, some people are really holding standards and other people are just faster and faster and faster. But the second part, do I see gi going away? No, I think there'll always be, a space for gi. I think, there needs to be some changes in some of the rule sets and stuff for IBJJF to make it more exciting, to get people to continue doing it. But, while everyone is saying gi is dying, the IBJJF is growing exponentially, which is because jiu-jitsu is growing. But, we were just at Masters Worlds, and I think they said there was like 8,000 competitors.
Yeah, there's definitely evidence of gi growing, even though this could be sourcing, as I'm thinking about this. This could be the comment of gi going away could be sourcing from the fact that no gi is growing so much faster. So the percentage relationship between them is the no gi is getting much bigger while gi is still growing, but not as fast. And perhaps it's less visible than the ADCC and no gi grappling. So as all of this is unfolding, as we continue moving through the future, you just mentioned a moment ago that there's some changes have to take place from a gi perspective, and also from how we run academies and how we reward and continue going through these belt and promotions and so on. What would be your criteria for someone to receive a black belt or be a subject of having that status or that rank?
Well, I mean, I think that's a good question, but I think first we got to start with what's a blue belt,
True, absolutely.
I think I see the biggest disparity in, what people, I think the biggest range, I will say, and, something that black belts talk about a lot, the biggest range of how good someone is a black belt. You have guys at black belt that maybe you don't think should be there, and guys that are so amazing, you just can't even deal with them. But at blue belt, for me, for my academy, it is extremely important that someone understand all the aspects of self-defense, that they have takedowns, that, if they get in a physical confrontation, they have that ability to defend themselves. It can be faster, slower, whatever, but normally speaking with me, if someone's training 3 days a week to 5 days a week consistently, we're somewhere around the 2-year mark. It usually takes for, someone to achieve a blue belt. I've had guys with wrestling backgrounds that are training 5-6 days a week that, they're going to get that faster, and people that, are going to get that slower. It's not about a time. It's not like if you pay tuition for 2 years and you train 1 day a week, you're going to get a blue belt. Have guys that have been white belts for 6 or 7 years because they barely ever train. On the black belt side of things and what that looks like, to me, if I'm going to give someone a black belt, they represent me as a person. So there's a character aspect there too. I'm not just giving a black belt to anybody. I want someone that's going to represent myself, represent my academy, represent, my instructor, and go from there. So I'm more on the traditional side of martial arts there. And I believe someone should have the ability to teach. That doesn't mean that they need to teach or need to be a teacher, but they should know enough about the technique to be able to describe to me what they're doing.
But how do you go through all these dynamics? Let's just talk about the blue belt for a second. How do you go through these dynamics while we are talking about different professions, different body sizes, different ages, different personalities, different trades and past and family histories that we come from? I mean, it is almost impossible. First of all, jiu-jitsu is so difficult to measure. So that's one. Two, how do you set these criteria to...
Okay, so from a positional standpoint, let's say not everybody needs to have an awesome sit-up sweep, right? Mm-hmm. Maybe a guy's got a big belly, the sit-up sweep's not going to work for him. Mm-hmm. But he needs to have effective sweeps from the closed guard and the open guard that he can perform. Mm-hmm. Maybe somebody's not going to be able to do a guillotine for the same reason, or they have short arms, but they need to be able to have submissions that they can perform from key areas and be able to defend certain things. So, you don't have to be good at everything offensively. Defensively, you do, right? I mean, everybody's got to be able to know early signs, stopping people from getting arms around necks, things like that. But I don't think saying that everybody needs to be good at the sit-up sweep to get a blue belt makes sense. But does someone need to have effective sweeps from closed and open guard? Absolutely. So, if I'm going to give you a blue belt, I'm not doing a formalized test. I don't believe in that, but I'm going to need to be able to verify that you can sweep from the closed and open guard.
So essentially what you're talking about is a certain level of understanding and offensive and defensive position, but it's really up to that student which tools they use to achieve that goal. Am I going to try?
Of course. I mean, right, there's people that have very thick, short legs. They're probably not going to be triangling people, and that's okay. But, I have long, skinny legs. I catch a lot of triangles. That doesn't mean I'm trying to show a guy who's 280 pounds, that played D1 football, he's got to be able to do a great triangle because that's what, I'm good at. And then you're talking about, I have students that are 100-pound women and students that are 300-pound men. While generally speaking, I teach a pressure-based style of jiu-jitsu. Someone who's lighter is going to have more movement in their game. They're going to have to be able to break down frames and move around stuff, because if they settle in, they're going to get thrown off. And that's, the student has a say in what things they want to do, but I have an obligation as an instructor to be, speaking to them about what they're doing and, tailoring the lesson towards them. Normally, when I teach a technique in class, as I move around the room, I'll get questions. Hey, I can't, fit my arm around this person, or, do this, or, somebody maybe from back control likes using a body triangle. Well, they might be able to do it to everybody up to their size, but then, if that's the only back control you're going to learn, and now you're, going against a 280-pound guy who you can't fit your legs around them, and now they're just throwing your hooks off, that's a problem.
Yeah, that goes away instantly. So essentially what you're talking about is catering the jiu-jitsu towards the individual, not just making a cookie cutter recipe and just giving it to all the students. And I think that really what separates good instructors from everybody else. The phenomenal instructors, the one on the top of, the best one of the best ones, is the ones who can literally point one or two things and they change it. Everything changes. They just are able to tap into your mind and the little tips or little changes, little adjustments, and things instantly open up for you. How rewarding is jiu-jitsu for you as an instructor?
I mean, for me, it's cliche, but, jiu-jitsu was life-changing for me. From starting and then I started teaching at purple belt. We didn't teach any NOGI then, so I started a NOGI program. That's how it started. And then, to now where I teach all of our adult classes, it's, amazing to see the progress that people make, not just in jiu-jitsu. I mean, that's great. And I like seeing people get better. That's really cool. But seeing people really come out of their shell, seeing people that, we talked about earlier in the podcast, people that were super shy and kind of kept to themselves and had no confidence, seeing them, really come out as a person. That's what the most rewarding part is for me. I don't think, it doesn't matter to me and no one else aside from probably the person winning in that moment. Like you said, it's a great accomplishment to win something, but, outside of a very small group of people, nobody knows what, the IBJJF Masters Worlds is, much less, the Worlds or anything else. It's great that you accomplished that. And those are things that I train for and are important to me, but it's more about your internal struggle and, getting through things and, getting through adversity. If you can, we talk about if you can deal with someone outweighing you by 50 pounds on top of you, crushing you, and sort that problem out, you're probably going to be able to sort most things in your day-to-day life.
No, that's what makes jiu-jitsu so beautiful and yet so challenging. You talk about this diversity of overcoming these obstacles and people coming out of the shell and becoming different personalities, right? Being shy or maybe very reserved. Do you recall one particular person that really strikes you from that personality change? And you don't have to mention names or anything, but I'm curious. Those are always very impactful experiences.
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, I have a blue belt right now that's been with me for probably a little under 3 years right now. Recently got his blue belt. And when he first came in, he's a young man, probably 25, 26, and very shy. And, watching him really come out of his shell has been awesome. And watching too, he was somebody when he first started where, if anybody would really kind of touch his neck before they even locked anything in, he would tap super quick. And now he's probably one of the hardest guys in the gym to choke. I mean, sometimes it's where I'm like, hey man, you got to tap a little earlier. You seem like you're about to go out.
Yeah. That's, I do recall I have a female student, and I remember the first day when she came into the academy, and I never asked her, but I don't believe she even knew what jiu-jitsu is when she came in. And then, after explanation, talking to our GM, she was like, I don't want to touch guys, sweaty guys. I don't want to touch sweaty guys. And then few years later, she's still here. She trains, and man, you let her, she will destroy you. She will take your head off, and that's the person who didn't want to touch the sweaty guys. But it's always good to hear those stories as people continue evolving and maturing and changing, because that, in my mind at least, jiu-jitsu changes lives. As cliche as it sounds, I mean, it changed mine, and it sounds like it's done the same for you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Listen, believe it or not, we've been at this for almost an hour. But before we start wrapping this up, this great conversation, one of the things that we do end of each episode is our previous guest, which was Johnny Tama, asked a question, and he had no idea that you will be answering this question. He had no idea who will be on the next episode, but I'm going to throw that question at you, and let's see where this goes. Always interesting end of the episode as we come up to that point. Johnny asked, after achieving or completing your biggest goal, how do you move on? What's your next step? What's your train of thought after you achieved the biggest goal, whether on the mat or in life?
So for me, this is an easy question. It's something that, I've dealt with a lot in my life. I remember when I was in high school, I won the individual state cross country championship as a junior. So I won the state meet, and they asked me what was going through my mind after I had won the race. And instantly what went through my mind was, how do I break the state record next year? For me, anytime I achieve anything, what's instantly on my mind is, what's the next goal? What's the next metric, that I'm trying to hit? So if we're saying, the day that we hit 100 members, which was a goal Mark and I set when Mark signed up as a full-time manager, that day, hey, congratulations, this is awesome, so excited. How do we get to 150? If I've done well in a tournament, won something, how do I win the next one or win the next level? For me, it's always about what's next. Always looking forward. People always say don't look back, but I think that's I know what they mean. You shouldn't dwell on mistakes, but I think you should always look back and what could we have done better? What's working, what's not working? How do we make those adjustments? Things like that. I think if you start to accomplish something and then be content with what you accomplish, you're going to start sliding down that hill pretty quick if you don't keep trying to climb up.
No, I know exactly what you mean. But so let me rephrase this a little bit and kind of continue from there. How do you achieve, or how do you set those goals within jiu-jitsu? Considering that jiu-jitsu is very difficult to measure, and we are surrounded by other people who their goals are different, plus they have different brains, different bodies, all this is just mass.
Yeah. So for me, for my focus on jiu-jitsu, I work on very particular things for periods of time. For example, I'd be saying like, I'm working on taking the back and, finishing rear naked chokes on everybody. That's what I'm going to work on, and certain things. I spent probably a year working on open guard passing, just a particular kind of set of techniques from Henry, my coach. And it's difficult, I think, to measure progress there, because as I'm getting better at doing something, the people I'm doing it to are getting better at defending it. So it's very difficult to say. I think, an interesting question is, how do you know? I mean, okay, winning a medal or something, that's kind of arbitrary, and you don't really have control over that. I don't know, I go to Masters Worlds as a black belt. I mean, maybe Lovato enters my division because he wants to do Masters. Then what am I going to do? But how do you know when you've achieved a goal? I mean, I think ultimately in jiu-jitsu, the answer is that you never do, right? I want to get really good at guard passing. Well, what's good at guard passing mean? I mean, whose guard can you pass? How fast can you pass it? And how few steps can you pass it? I think that's one of the things that draws us all to jiu-jitsu, is that you can't ever master it. You can't ever learn it all. There's always somebody better. There's always someone to challenge you. That's one of the things that why I think a lot of us are so compelled to keep doing it and keep doing it so often. It's something that you can't ever really beat or master.
But okay, then. So, but let me ask you this then: what do you tell the new students who are just starting? I mean, if we tell everybody you can't achieve your goals, you will never know whether you're progressing or not. First of all, nobody will sign up, and then those who do sign up for some odd reason, they will quit.
Yeah, of course. So for people that are new, I mean, being a better version of yourself. And, something I know you just had Paul Sharp on recently. Paul Sharp talks about, can Dan today beat up Dan from a year ago, 5 years ago? What does that look like? And setting goals when you're newer is actually, I think, easier. Hey, everyone is getting me in side control and getting to mount and cross collar choking me. So, I'm going to start on both sides of it. How do I get out of cross collar chokes better? And how do I not get my guard passed? And if I do get my guard passed, how do I not get mounted? And, things like that. And then, when you're coming up through the ranks, you have the belts as goals, right? And you have to be communicating with your coach. And certainly we all know that, you shouldn't be asking like, why am I not getting promoted? But, what things do I need to be working on in order to become a blue belt, a purple belt, a brown belt? And to me, those goals are never competition oriented. I have students who have won Masters Worlds in their divisions and still spent 2 years at the same belt. The fact that, someone's able to perform at a level, doesn't mean that they're at that level necessarily. When you talk about, like, I'm sure when John Jones was a white belt, he could submit me. That doesn't make him a black belt, right? So competition wise, I don't think that's it. But, sometimes a goal for someone, depending, we're talking about, the idea that, everyone is going to be different. When I started and I was 240 pounds, maybe your goal, not mine at that time, but maybe someone's goal is I want to get under 200 pounds. It doesn't have to be, even though it's through jiu-jitsu, it doesn't have to be a jiu-jitsu related goal. I want to get in shape. I want to make friends. I want to be more social. Those are all things that come with jiu-jitsu and can be part of people's goals.
Yeah. And I think big part of this, a big component of that success is the communication between the coach or instructor down to the student as well. It's not only us asking, what do I need to do to achieve that blue belt or purple belt? It's also setting the expectations from top down, saying, listen, this is where you are, and my expectations are to get here in order for you to achieve that, and I want you to make you successful. Let's work on this together. Let's figure out the path so you can stay focused on it, and eliminate all the distractions around us, because we know plenty of those are surrounding us. Beautiful. Dan, as we're wrapping this up, what a phenomenal conversation. Thank you for being here and sharing all of this. Do you remember, by the way, do you remember the day when obviously you do, but I'll ask anyway, when you got your black belt?
I do.
What was going through your mind? That's often asked questions.
So I got my black belt in Thailand. We were at one of Henry's camps.
That's why I asked.
And we had been on a trip that day, or the day before, and a good friend of mine, Will Hill, was already a black belt, had cut his foot really bad and was hospitalized. he decided to fly home and get surgery instead of staying there. So we carried him up the stairs because the training room was upstairs. So at the time, I did not know I was getting my black belt. I put it together later that, Will came up the stairs. He wasn't going to train. He knew I was going to get promoted, but, it's a pretty overwhelming feeling. It certainly wasn't. I know some people have planned promotions and, hey, on this day, we're doing these things. So I had no idea. I spent a long time as a brown belt, 4 or 5 years. So, in some ways I just felt like I was going to be a brown belt forever. I didn't really know, but I think it's a huge sense of accomplishment. And, there's a lot of imposter syndrome there too, even though I've been a brown belt a long time. Like, well, I don't know if I'm really a black belt. And now, now I've got to meet this next set of standards. And, as we talked about in Johnny's question, what you accomplish a goal, what's next? The black belt's an interesting one because there's nothing past it. After black belt, you're not awarded anything. You're just given time, right? It's 3 years. You get a stripe on it. It's not that you've accomplished things. So now you have to, decide what your focus is going to be. And for me, that focus has been on my students and on giving back and, teaching other people. And, the jiu-jitsu that I teach and that I've learned from Henry and from Mike, I believe is, the purest form of self-defense based jiu-jitsu that, we always have that combat perspective on our mind and trying to spread that message and, help my students not only learn that, but learn it in a way that they can spread that message too. And, have that be the jiu-jitsu that's going out into the world.
Yeah, and definitely that is interesting point that you're making after that black belt. Is that why many consider getting that black belt like a new beginning, resetting and starting over?
I think so because, I don't know about you, but I thought about getting a black belt so much. And like, when you're starting out, you're getting beat so bad by everyone that, all black belts seem the same to you, right? If you're a white belt, every black belt is the same. They're just so much better than you that you can't relate. But then once you get a black belt, and maybe before, maybe purple belt, you start to realize blue belt maybe, but there's such a disparity in black belts. There's guys that, some of them just quit training and they only teach and they don't roll. And some of that's injury based, some of it's ego, and some people stay dedicated to learning and getting better. And some people I just think say, hey, I got a black belt. I'm good. I'm just going to show up one day a week to open mat and that's it.
So if you had to summarize it, were you ready for the black belt?
Yeah, I think I was ready, for it. I was already running an academy already.
But you had no idea. You had no idea it was coming.
No idea. We were just at a camp and we lined up for kind of a picture or something. And Henry was like, oh, we're waiting for one more black belt. And then he pulled out the black belt and that was kind of it.
So what's going through your mind the moment your name gets dropped? Like, walk me through that emotional part. Yeah,
it was super emotional. And then I'm thinking, well, people are probably supposed to say something, but I don't know what to say, So I tried to but it was all these emotions going through. And, I had a lot of people that I knew at the camp, which that was really cool. People I really respected are, black belts and up there. So that was awesome. And it was just kind of surreal and overwhelming. I don't know. Thinking back on it, it'll be 3 years in January. It seems like it was yesterday. You think it seems like it was yesterday I started too. It doesn't feel like it's been that long I've been doing jiu-jitsu, and it becomes, such a part of your life. Even people that don't own academies. I mean, if you're training 3 to 5 days a week, I was just down in New Orleans with a bunch of my friends, they all train jiu-jitsu, or their husbands or wives do or whatever. You end up, your friend circle starts to pretty quickly, become that, and it becomes such a huge part of your life.
Yeah, we often talk with Gary. We talk about this particularly on this show. Like I know probably a handful of people who are not in jiu-jitsu. Like all my friends, everybody I know, kind of somehow, some way, they link into the jiu-jitsu world, some capacity. So it's interesting how that circle starts, not only grows, but it gets interconnected all around the world, different cities, different states, and you just make these connections and relationships. What a beautiful journey and what a beautiful experience. I wish more people had the opportunity to do it, then as time goes on, hopefully a lot of them will continue trying, especially with what we were talking about early on.
I get a lot of people sending me messages online I've met throughout my life or went to high school or college with, hey, I live here, where should I go train? Mm-hmm. That's a tough question. I'm sure you get that too. Unless I know someone in that area, I'll kind of look at who's around and what the lineage is and, give a, not a recommendation, but hey, this person's under this person. And I think that could be a good start. But, I always tell people to try a couple places and see, where they think's a good fit. And, your schedule and your proximity to a place make a big difference. If a place is an hour away versus 5 minutes, you're just going to end up training way more at the place that's closer.
Well, but also what they offer too, right? It's if you want to train gi and you go to 10th Planet, they might not be what you're achieving, so there's a lot of variables, and my mind is the same, or my thought is the same. Try a few places, see how the culture is, how the dynamics, see how they teach, and see if it works, and try it, and hopefully you'll find a place that fits you well. And there's a big time investment and monetary investment too. I mean, jiu-jitsu is not cheap. It's, so we got to find a good place for ourselves, so take the time and find what works best for you. All right, Dan, as we're wrapping this up, if anybody wants to reach out to you, wants to find you, are you on social media, websites? Yep. Where are you at?
I'm on Facebook, obviously, Dan Hart, Instagram, Dan_T_Hart. That's HART. AlphaBJJ.com is our website for the gym. I've got an upcoming camp down in Tamarindo, Costa Rica at RŌL Academy. I donate 100% of the money down to the academy, which is unique. Last year we raised around $20,000 for them. So check out RŌL Jiu-Jitsu. Even if you don't want to come to my camp, you can donate. All the money goes to help local kids. They run a huge kids program in the area, Tamarindo, Costa Rica. They bus the kids to and from. So while the parents are at work, the kids aren't getting in trouble. They're learning, leadership, jiu-jitsu, everything. So it's really an awesome thing.
Beautiful. And I'll make sure that all the links are posted in the show notes. So if you guys want to connect with Dan, feel free to do it. If you want to go to one of the camps that he's part of, feel free to reach out to him, or just click on the notes and click on the link and sign up, donate. It all goes to that great cause. All right, Dan. Let's wrap this up for today. Once again, I do appreciate your story. I do appreciate your thoughts and your philosophy on jiu-jitsu. And then, as always, if you're driving down south and you're ever in the area, swing by. I would love to have you at my academy.
I'll come by and hang out.
All right. Well, we'll see you around. Thanks.
Thank you for listening to RŌL Radio. If you enjoyed the show, don't forget to leave us a review and help us make the show even more amazing. For future episodes, check out our website and follow us on all major podcast platforms. Take care.